I want to welcome in our next guest, welcoming him to Nebraska. We're honored to be joined by the new voice of the Huskers, Kyle Crooks, joining us here on the Husker Online show. Kyle, congratulations first and foremost, because obviously I know how competitive this industry is, how hard it is, and you've had to do a lot of hard work behind the scenes to get to this point, to get this opportunity. Congratulations on landing the voice of the Huskers, and I know a lot of people are excited to hear you get to work.
Yeah, it's a dream come true, like I tweeted out the other day, and it's a competitive industry, and it's a tough industry, and it's one that you certainly take your lumps along the way. So I've been at this probably for 15 years on a professional basis, and you have the ups and the downs, and this is the ultimate up. And obviously what comes with a position like this is, one, you get a chance to be with one of the best athletic programs in the country, and every single sport matters and people show up, but you're also stepping in an unfortunate circumstances. Greg Sharp is forever going to be the voice of the Huskers, and his name's going to be on that booth forever. And I want to do him proud. I want to make sure I do justice for the fan base and for these programs. And I'm just grateful. Grateful is the word that I continue to use, because you run out of words to try to describe what you're feeling.
How would you characterize your style? I mean, how would you describe it to people?
Yeah. So throughout the years, I've taken bits and pieces from so many different people. When you come up and you learn how to do this, and from college to then the stages of getting to where I've been now. But I want to say passionate is a big part of it. I think you'll understand, you're listening to the Husker Radio Network when you hear my calls. Like, you're going to hear the passion for what Nebraska does. And I'm very, one of my big passions is describing and painting that picture on the radio. I love the task of trying to be able to describe a run off right tackle in 15 different ways. I have on my notes app, I have a list of about 40 different descriptors for a run, 50 different descriptors for a pass, for a tackle. What I'm obsessed, and I love the art of what is a 3rd and 6 at the 46-yard line sound in the second quarter, as much as what a game-winning touchdown sounds like. So I think for me, you're going to, hear somebody that is very passionate about the craft, that loves it, that has been a student of it for a long time, but has a lot of energy and a lot of passion, and has hopefully, I think, going to have a really good chemistry with DB and everybody in that booth.
Kyle, I know you're probably drinking out of a fire hose right now. We're trying to get caught up with the entire history of Nebraska football. I guess, what was your familiarity with the program and just the tradition of Nebraska football? And I guess what lies ahead over the next few months as you try to learn everything there is to know about a brand new program?
Yeah, so, I've known the aura, I guess, of Nebraska football, especially in the 90s. So I was a kid in the 90s and sort of grew up watching and seeing some of those Nebraska teams and some of those big games. And that's where it sort of started for me. And, whenever I turn on a game here in recent years, I turn on the Big Ten Network, and no matter what season Nebraska's having, if it was, a year where things weren't going all that well, the one thing I would notice is there's not a seat empty in Memorial Stadium. And then you do the research and you see the consecutive sellouts going back a long time. And then the one thing that always stood out to me about Nebraska is a couple of years ago, that volleyball match that they had on Big Ten Network, right? And 92,000 fans. And you can imagine a large percentage of those fans in the upper tank couldn't see anything that was happening because it's such a small volleyball court in this massive stadium. But to me, that encapsulated what Nebraska had meant before I even knew this job was a possibility. And then you dive a little bit deeper into it and you see where Nebraska is at now, and outside of football, but men's basketball, a tournament trip a couple of years ago, and then you look at women's basketball. I think they average about 8,000 a game, and I actually had a chance to call a Nebraska gymnastics meet a couple of years ago. And you look at baseball, what they've done in the Big Ten tournament, and softball. I'm a softball guy here at Florida, so I've seen just how close they were to getting to a World Series, and they have probably the best player in the world in softball right now in Jordy Ball. But then you see where football is and where it's going to be. I think I'm coming in at a really good time, like I said, overall in athletics, but specifically with football. I think getting a chance to talk to Coach Rule and the limited interaction that I've had with him, that trend of year 3 under Coach Rule, and the biggest thing is you need a quarterback in this deal, right, to win games. And I feel like they have a guy that if all goes well, you might be talking about him a little bit more nationally when it comes to some of these big time awards. So, I certainly know about the history and the passion of this place, and look forward to being in it in person.
We're joined here by the new voice of the Huskers, Kyle Crooks, who was named the new play-by-play voice for football and the host of Sports Nightly this week. Kyle, give us an idea what the process is like, because it's not like the play-by-play job of Nebraska gets posted like for applicants to apply for very often. Just from your knowledge, I mean, in the industry, how many applicants were there, and the process of being a finalist and interviewing? I mean, what is that like to go through something? Because I have to imagine there are a lot of talented people that put their name in for this position.
Yeah, it's exhausting for starters. I believe Troy had said there was over 300 different applicants. So I had done, believe now when I look back at it, 3 different rounds of interviews. The initial screener interview with a group of people. Playfly was a big part of this entire process. They are the multimedia rights holder for Nebraska, so they deal in broadcasting and a lot of different elements around the athletic program. So interviewed with Playfly, interviewed with Nebraska, and then second round got a chance to talk with just Nebraska personnel only, Brandon Meyer, Keith Mann, who, great guys, and look forward to getting a chance to learn more about their stories and see them in Lincoln. And then the final step in the process was going to campus. This is where you get a chance to meet Troy and see everybody in person and see what they have going on. I had the chance to, one of my good friends in this business is actually an assistant coach right now for the women's basketball program at Nebraska, Julian Asibe. And he walked me through Memorial Stadium at night. The lights were off, and I was walking through the tunnel where the players run out, and I was seeing everything. I'd walk through the entire basketball facility and track facility and volleyball facility. Like it was amazing. And so I got a chance to see everybody in person and prove to them that it was going to be a good fit. I think that was that part of the process of, everybody at this point is qualified and can call the games, but is it going to be a right fit? So meeting with everybody, lunches and conversations and all this stuff. I think it started in April and it finished up in, I think I was in Lincoln a couple weeks ago, and it finished up then. So it was a long, lengthy process, and I know they definitely did their due diligence.
A big part of this, Kyle, is that Sports Nightly show, which people I've been listening to that since 35 years. How much experience do you have with that sort of thing, hosting a nightly radio show?
Yeah, so I actually grew up, my biggest passion in this before play-by-play was sports talk radio.
Okay.
I grew up listening to Mike and the Mad Dog for 5.5 hours on WFAN. I grew up in northern New Jersey, so I was right in that New York, New Jersey media market. So that's probably where this whole broadcasting passion started. And what's fun is I went to County College of Morris before I went to a 4-year university. And I did my own talk show there just to get on a mic, and I would do my NFL picks, right? Almost sort of just like emulating what I heard on the radio with Mike and Chris and Mike and the Mad Dog. And I would broadcast. The only way you could hear it would be on the speaker above the cafeteria. So people would walk out after their lunch and they'd look up and be like, who the heck is this guy talking about how the Bears are going to beat the Cardinals and cover 3.5? And then I did a talk show in college, and I've done a lot here in Gainesville where I fill in on our afternoon drive show, and I've done phoners and guest appearances and all that stuff. And Shane Matthews, who's a legendary quarterback here at Florida, he actually hosts a podcast here, and I was essentially the host of that for a while. So it's a skill set, one that I've always loved, and I've always appreciated guys like you who who do the talk show, because the one thing I learned coming up is fans probably know more than me when it comes to it. That's why I sort of gravitated to the play-by-play side of it. But it's a craft, man. It's hard to, every day you got to be fresh, you got to be original, and it's a challenge.
You've got some pretty good resources with you as you adjust to this job, and guys like Kent Pavelka and John Baylor have been doing radio play-by-play here in Nebraska for a long time. Have you reached out to them at all, just to maybe pick their brains on maybe ways that can help you transition to this new role?
Yeah, I look forward to. I haven't chatted with them yet. Look forward to talking to Kent and John. I know I've talked a lot with Jessica Cootie and Damon Benning specifically about the football broadcast, and I have a lot of references to outside of just, I guess, the Nebraska footprint and people that I've leaned on. And Ian Eagle's been a great mentor of mine, and there's a lot of sitting voices that I've had conversations with of what it's gonna take, right? Because they've been in this position but at other places, and maybe don't necessarily understand what this specific position means at Nebraska. But there's people that I've talked to that are really big places that have given me advice as to sort of how to go about it. And the biggest thing that they've told me is I can't be Greg, right? Like I have to try to be myself and hope that fans eventually take to that. And one of the biggest things that I think has impressed me the most about this fan base is how nice they've been when it's not easy to see somebody else come in this position, that and they've heard Greg for 17 seasons, and people love nostalgia. They love the biggest thing about broadcasters is they are the soundtrack of some of the best moments of what they're most passionate about. In this case, Nebraska football, and for Greg, Nebraska baseball as well, and Sports Nightly. They could sit in the car and know they're going to hear Greg's voice. My biggest thing is I have to try to find my voice, right, and make sure that fans are eventually okay with that. And I know that's going to be a transition and a tough process, but I look forward to getting to know more about this fan base.
Well, Kyle, congratulations on the opportunity. I know a lot of people are excited to hear you get going. Arrowhead Stadium's right around the corner.
Yeah, can you believe it? It almost feels like for me, it's like 4 months away, but I've already started my 2-deep spotting charts, and I have things ready to go. I'm going position by position, going player by player to try and get notes and nuggets. And you guys are such a great resource for me listening, and you guys know this better than anybody, and the history of it and the current team and everything about it. So I look forward to leaning on you guys a little bit, and I'll be listening. I'm subscribed on Spotify, and I'll be listening to future episodes and learning more about everything.
Well, thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you guys having me, and thanks for chatting, taking the time.